Conceal Coalition! Sorry for the late start. We're usually very on time, but have you ever had a day where you and your computer and the internet don't quite work together? Well, I am glad you all decided to come and join me. We're talking about a topic today that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is how now is the absolute best time to be your own first responder. You know, we've never lived in a world that I can remember in my lifetime, and I'm a fairly old guy, where people are as on edge and the system is sort of starting to crumple a little bit around the edges. You know, if you think about it, what does it mean to be our first responder? You know, if we go back even a couple of generations, nobody would even understand in our ancestry how you would outsource your safety. I want you to think about this. You know, it wasn't until 1838 that the first police department in the United States, Boston PD, came in. Before that, if you had a problem, you had to deal with it. What's interesting is that's how we evolved as human beings, was in small family-like groups, because you needed this sort of small family unit in case you had to have some sort of response to a crisis. So that's why we want to become our own first responders. Now, let's talk about what our current problem is with responder. For a lot of people, they tell me, Austin, I don't need to be my own first responder. I have a cell phone. I'm going to dial 911 and my problems will be over. The only problem with that attitude is, I want you to think about the mechanism of how we call for 911. First off, we have to be in a situation that's calm enough that we can actually get it stabilized enough to call 911. When you call 911, you have to then communicate the information to start the process of sending the first responder you need, fire, police, ambulance, and then those people have to come in transit. In a perfect world, let's say 3 to 5 minutes. I want you to think about that for a second. If you have somebody in your house who wants to do you and your family harm, you're in some sort of transitional public space, or you have some sort of known threat and you're having a problem with, you've got to hope that you can get it calm enough to get on the phone to call and communicate that. The odds of that happening sometimes are very thin, and the consequences from it can be very bad. And that's assuming that 911 is in peak operating efficiency. Right now, it probably not. Let me tell you a couple reasons why. We have a severe personnel shortage across the country in all industries, but especially when it comes to first responders. One of the most critical experiences I see as a police officer in my own experience is we are running short of 911 operators. Now, you know how they all have that back the blue thing? It needs to be hug a dispatcher. Because in my world, a dispatcher is a lot harder job than law enforcement. They have to balance so many balls and keep so many parts of this emergency response coordinated. It's amazing. So if you find a dispatcher, show them some love. The problem with dispatchers are we don't have enough of them right now, and it takes a long time. They're just like any other part of that law enforcement response chain, that first responder chain, to train up and get ready. So we're running short on 911 operators. And it's really a job that takes a lot of experience to get good at. Second problem we have is when you call 911, especially for a criminal incident, we're trying to find a law enforcement officer. We're having problems with law enforcement officers. There's not many of them. And not only that, you have to understand law enforcement's going through a real difficult time right now with the reduction of our workforce. Some of it's the baby boomers are retiring. Some of it is we had the pandemic issues. What's happening though now is most people don't understand 50% of law enforcement in this country is under 10 officers. 75% is under 25. So if you start having a staffing problem of just 20%, that's a significant force. And remember, law enforcement 24/7, 365, we've got to keep this stuff staffed. And if that wasn't enough, that we don't have enough dispatchers and we don't have enough law enforcement officers out there, we have supply chain problems. Right now on PD, when I'm on patrol, my radio is conked out. Every time I transmit, I've got to restart the thing to get transmitted again. Every time I go and talk to the powers that be that, hey, I got a bad radio, they keep telling me the same thing. There are none in the supply chain. I don't know if it's chip shortage, I don't know if it's backed up, whatever, but we don't have it. We also have problems keeping our fleet going. We can't get new police cars. The Escape that I use in patrol, it's a specially designed police car. It's designed to take up like a 65 mile an hour rear end crash, whereas a regular car is about 35. So they have to take things off the assembly line to make the special police cars coming on in. And with supply chain shortage and the demand for cars, that's not happening. Plus, we have to have special tires for the types of driving you have to do to respond to your critical incidents. And the problem is we're having a hard time even finding the tires and repair parts. So when it comes time to looking what's going on around the country, you may notice a few things. I've got one of these I wrote down here, and that is, strangely enough, if you can believe this, Chicago in 2001 had about 788,000 priority calls to 911. 406,000 of them went unanswered, more than half. There was not enough staff to take care of the call. There was not enough officers to attend to the call. Or there was enough officers to attend to the call, but they were all out on service and they couldn't come to your call. They went unanswered. Some cities are reporting up to 20 minutes in response for a 911 call. I know that I patrol in a county right below Houston, Texas. That county is Harris County. And right now we are so short of officers. If I had a problem and I personally had to call out, I might be 10 or 12 minutes away from response. And trust me, if I call out and say I need help, everybody drops everything. Whereas if you call, you may not get that same exact response as a brother or sister in blue calling out to other brothers and sisters in blue. So the current issue is, if you can't get on the phone and call 911 expected, how do you become your own first responder? How do you break it down? Well, what you need to understand is it takes 3 steps to learn to be your first responder. Read, recognize, and react. Read your world for what it is and realize your world may not be as safe as you think. And it may not be as safe as it used to be last year or 2 years or 3 years ago. You may find that now that when you park your car, you wonder if your catalytic converter is going to still be there when you get back. When you read the newspaper, you're wondering, does anybody get jailed for anything anymore because they're so backlogged? I know in the county above me that Houston, Texas resides in right now, there's about 136,000 misdemeanor and felony cases backed up. So it's not like the law enforcement process doesn't want to take and house these people and keep them away from the good citizens, the people who've done something against the law. There's no place to put them. We can't run them through the courts fast enough. So if that's not enough case to be it, first thing I want you to do is I want you to read your world inside out. It may not be as safe as I thought. And also, don't have magical thinking while you're reading the world. You know magical thinking. Yeah, that's the big city's problem. But I live in a safe neighborhood. Like the criminals have some big Google map they work off. Ooh, can't go to your house because that's that safe neighborhood. How about this? Yeah, that's that big city problem, but I live out in the country. Ain't no crime in the country. There's crime. There's no witnesses. But the most dangerous thing you can have when you decide to be your own first responder in that first step is the most dangerous syndrome in the world called, it'll never happen to me. And the reason that is so risky is because if you don't truly believe that a criminal event can happen to you and your loved ones, you won't be motivated to make those small, simple, consistent changes over time, which make you safer. Now you'll notice I didn't say safe. There is no safe in nature. There are things we can do safer. There are things we can do to minimize our exposure and vulnerabilities. So the first thing you want to do to become your own first responder is read your own situation. Find out what your baseline is of risk and ways to deal with it. Next thing is, the second step is to recognize what your own personal vulnerabilities are and where your holes are in equipment, training, and tactics, and being able to affect self-rescue and have a more positive outcome in any kind of criminal situation. And the third thing is, be prepared to react. Have a bias towards action that is restrained within law. Because remember, if what you do is not legal, it is by definition illegal. And as you'll hear me reference a time or two as we go through these webinars, there's never been much margin for error in a self-defense situation. And today, there's essentially none given. And even a perfect, whatever that means, perfect self-defense response will be viewed with skepticism on some level, criminally, civilly, or some sort of social pariah kind of setting. So what are the 3 steps again to be your own first responder? Read your world and recognize it may not be as safe as you thought. Next thing, recognize your vulnerabilities in your personal security situation and make sure that you have the equipment, training, tactics to effect a self-rescue with a positive outcome. And the third thing is be prepared to react with a bias towards action that's restrained by the legal system. Now, hopefully, some of the people I'm talking to out here are Conceal Coalition University members. If so, thank you for your support, and I hope you like what you've seen so far. If you haven't joined Conceal Coalition University, I really strongly would encourage you to do so. If you want to be your own first responder, you have to think about it. There's really going to be kind of 3 things we got to work into that: read, recognize, and react. You need knowledge, you need skill, and you need judgment. And we designed Conceal Coalition University to give you the base knowledge. Now, yes, you can go learn this on this medium or that medium or a TikTok or whatever, but none of those bits and pieces put it together in a system that makes sense to an adult learner in a learning educational software that your brain will understand and help retain. That's the knowledge. Next thing is skill set. You can develop that on your own. Hopefully soon you'll come to one of our regional virtual tactical academy classes where we can take physical skills and we can give you physical training for them. But the other part of that skill set is the cognitive skills. And those cognitive skills we can do on our own. And we can train that by watching through the sections at Concealed Carry University. And as you're going to notice as we come out with season 2 next year, I've got a lot more in depth and I've got a lot more adult learning tools to help you out. Everything from guided imagery to discrete skill set packages that we're coming out with. And I think you're going to be amazed at what we offer. And I don't think you're going to find it anywhere else. And what's really interesting is, as I talk to some of my friends in the law enforcement community, some of my law enforcement educators want to start trying to incorporate this into law enforcement training, because I know we all like to think that the law enforcement, your first responders, are educated, but most of them don't have time to get education. We're too busy making calls. We have no ability to cut our schedule off to go out there and train more, even though more training is necessary. So the first thing you want to have is you want to have knowledge. Next thing you want to have skill. But then the next thing you need, the third thing to be your own first responder, is judgment. Now, as my father used to say, the problem with judgment is good judgment usually is the result of having expressed poor judgment and surviving it. So what we're looking for is we want an environment where you can practice your judgment in a low stakes environment and experiment with what works best for you. Because think about it. If you're 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle and a 5% body fat, that's a whole lot different than being 5'2", former ballerina. These are completely different skill sets, completely different ways of interacting with the world, and also completely different vulnerabilities in the real world. So you need to have a place to practice that judgment. When it comes, though, to the skill sets that we want to specifically focus on in this conversation about how to become a first responder, let's talk off with my favorite. Firearm storage. Uh-oh, everybody just went to sleep. Hold on, hang with me just a second. When it comes to firearm storage, there's actually two types of storage. There's sort of long-term storage and there's lifestyle storage. Now, when you went through hopefully your basic license to carry class or an NRA familiarization class, or you were just raised by some very conscious parents or gun owners who taught you how to use guns, you understood about long-term storage. You lock it away, you have gun and ammo separate, all that, that's good. When you talk about being a first responder, though, you have a more intimate relationship with your firearm. And we need to have a more, this may not be the right way to explain it, but dynamic relationship with storing that gun. Now, if you've been through the Concealed Carry University, you've probably heard me say this on more than one episode, which is, in my world, for whatever it's worth, there's only 3 places a firearm should ever be. In the hand of a rational, sober, trained adult. Attach the body by a holster, sling, to a rational, sober, trained, confident adult. Or locked away from anybody that's not a rational, sober, competent, trained adult. Now, when you think about long-term storage, that's great. Gun and ammo separate, take the gun apart, trigger locks, magazine locks, put it all in a big box, lock it up, hermetically seal the building. Great, got that. But when you have a daily carry firearm, have you really spent the time and thought about where you're going to store that whenever it's not in your holster? Think about your vehicle. How many times as a first responder, you've been in an incident where you go, you know what, I can't take my gun into this building, so I'm going to have to leave it in my car. For me, a car is not a holster, and it's not a secure place to store a firearm. So I have a lockbox with a cable that I can put my firearm in, lock it. Now, is that a perfect solution? No, but it's a whole lot better than the console or the glove box. If you're thinking about being your own first responder, we also have to think about that secure gun storage in a dynamic sense when you go to a relative's over the holidays and spend time, or you're in a hotel room, or where are you going to put it if you're in your office and you can't carry it all the time? So we want to think about storage in a dynamic, lifestyle-based view. And remember, you've heard me say this many times at the end of every episode in Concealed Carry University. Gun ownership is our right, but education and training is our responsibility. But I always left out one thing, and it hit me the other day. It should be gun ownership is our right, but education, training, and safe gun storage is our responsibility. If you think about it, Being your own first responder means you have an intimate relationship with a firearm. We should also have a very intimate pattern for how we store that firearm when it's not in our hand, it's not in the holster, or it's locked away from anybody who's not competent. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about being your own first responder is awareness. Now, what's really interesting is when you think about being your own first responder, most people think about going to the gun. I'm going to shoot them. I get this all the time. 30 years in the industry, I get this all the time. Austin, this is so-and-so. Hey, how's it going? I want to buy a gun. Okay, why? I want to be safe. Okay? Being safe and buying a gun are two separate issues. I would tell them, if you really want to be safe, more important than buying a gun is master the skills of awareness. The problem is we think about a gun as a tool to be safer, to be our own first responders. We're thinking about the incident. If he does this with a hockey mask and a chainsaw, I'm going to do that. He tries to rob me at the ATM, I'm going to do that. That's called bang. That's the incident. That's the moment it happens. And then everything else is to the right of bang. What we want to do is we want to keep everything to the left of bang before the incident. I want you to think about awareness this way. When does a crime start for the good guy? And when does a crime start for the bad guy? When a crime starts for the bad guy is when a thought goes through the bad person's head and they say, that person's quick, easy, low risk, low possibility resistance. The risk is worth reward. I want to attack them. And they're going to either have a motive that's either going to be process, profit, or personal. Personal, I hate that person, I'm attacking them. Process, it's a sexual assault. They have the parts I need. I'm going to complete it. Or it's a profit crime. They have money. They have resources that I want. That's when the crime starts for the bad guy. When the crime starts for us, the good people, it's the second we realize that, man, we're in a problem. And the faster we can know that read, recognize, and react, that, hey, I'm in a problem, the faster I do that, the more time I've got, and the more time I've got knowing that I'm in a bad situation, the more options I have. The more options I have, the more likely I am to overcome the already bad reactive situation and affect a more positive outcome. One of my jobs as a police officer is I have to do field training. I have to take baby cops and loan them my cool until they get their own. What's really interesting is I noticed is what's the difference between a baby cop and experienced cop is experienced cops are much more aware and they tend to see the problems much, much earlier. And they can affect a lot more change because they're in a proactive, not a reactive model. So when it comes to awareness, it's a simple formula of read, recognize, and react. Read your world. Now, when you read your world, what are we reading? Are we looking for chainsaw and hockey mask? No. The problem with looking for trouble, when you look for trouble is rarely there when you're looking for trouble. And that is the most complicated, convoluted sentence ever in the English language. But it's pretty good for this. And the reason is what you're looking for is not the things that are scary. It's you're looking for the normal, the baseline. And when we look for baseline and awareness, we're looking for those things that are either above or below. So if you walked into a convenience store and you didn't see the clerk and everyone else is standing around and not looking at you, that's below the baseline. There should be a clerk back there. And people should notice that there should be a clerk back there. And we're looking for things that are below the baseline as well as above the baseline. Things that are not there that should be there and things that are there that shouldn't be there. And the only way you can recognize that is to walk through your life looking for the calm, looking for the normal, the baseline of behavior. Next, you want to recognize anomalies, anything that stands out that could be a problem. And then you want to have a bias towards action and react. And when it comes time to react, your awareness allows you more chance to either fight, flight, or freeze, because that's your only choice when you have a crisis. Fight, flight, feet don't fail me now, or freeze. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me. The next thing you want to think about when it comes to being your own first responder is not the gun. It's de-escalation. Now, what's really interesting is when we talk about de-escalation, I think it is the most underrated self-defense skill there is. What it amazes me is I've taught this topic at the academy level, and it just puzzles me. You get 60 hours of firearms training, and you get about 6 hours of de-escalation training, and there's lunch involved in that 6 hours. It seems to me that if we would teach our officers spend more time with de-escalation, we'd need a lot less of that shooting stuff. Now, when it comes to de-escalation, it is a confusing thing. I'm a certified de-escalation instructor, and a lot of times I'm seeing a lot of officers will call me up because they go, Davis will show up, he'll do that de-escalation thing. Like I'm some sort of Jedi, like, this is not the drone you're looking for. No, de-escalation is not something you do to somebody. It's something you offer somebody. Like, hey, I got this hot, delicious plate of de-escalation. Would you like some? Now, remember, when you try to de-escalate a situation, you need to understand the basics of human communication. Human beings only communicate one of two ways. That's it. Human beings only communicate one of two ways. That's it. One, force. Two, reason. That's it. So the minute they no longer respond to reason is when you have to use force. And if they want to use force and you can get them to back down to the level they can understand reason, that's when de-escalation becomes apparent. So what you need to understand is when you're in the middle of a de-escalation situation is they are way up here for whatever reason, whether this is social or predatory violence. And if it's predatory violence, there's a real slim chance you're going to have to de-escalate them without using force to de-escalate. And, pepper spray, gun, hit them with a bat, that's de-escalation by force. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get them from here down to here so we can communicate with them. If you've ever been in a romantic relationship or married, you know when one or both of you are up here, there's not a lot of reason, okay? So we've got to get them down to where we can reason. So de-escalation is about taking the heat, light, and flash out of this so we can get back down to the substance of what we're trying to accomplish, which is to gain willful compliance. One thing about de-escalation, and I use this a lot as a police officer to decide if you can or you can't de-escalate a situation, it's called the TEB, T-E-B formula. TEB, T-E-B formula. T stands for thoughts. Is the person you're trying to de-escalate you're involved with, are their thoughts clear or contaminated? Emotion. Are they high or low emotion? And behavior. Are they compliant or non-compliant? And with just those three little factors, you can create a sort of grid in your head that tells you exactly what you're dealing with. If you're in a situation where somebody's in your house and they have contaminated thoughts, they're high emotion and they're non-compliant, you have a high-speed emergency right away. You have someone in your house, contaminated thoughts, low emotion, high compliance, you may have more time to respond to this threat. So the more you work with this little matrix, and hopefully in time we will have a whole webinar where I just take you through this and show you examples of this, it's going to make your process of de-escalation a lot simpler because you're going to know really quickly who you can and cannot de-escalate and where the risk level is in this and what your options are. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is being your own first responder. And I need you to think about this kind of in a visual way, imagine or kind of picture it. Is verbal commands. You see, when we show up on scene as law enforcement officers or first responders, the thing that usually gets us stable situation is something called command presence. That's how we carry ourselves. It's also the words we choose to use and the tone of voice we choose to use. And what's really interesting to me is how most people think about shooting the gun, but they never think about speaking and giving commands. In my view of the world, maybe wrong, but in my model of the world, we're going to end up pointing a lot more guns at people than we shoot, and we're going to point a lot more guns and talk to people than we have to shoot. And if we never practice talking and shooting or talking and not shooting, when it comes time, any behavior that's not wired together will not fire together, and you're not going to be able to have a creative thought at that moment to combine them. So we need to put the knowledge, the skill, and the judgment training in verbal commands. And make sure that you know the difference between an alpha and a beta command. And hopefully we will cover that in one of our future webinars. Because I hope I've given you an overview here. We're going to dive a lot deeper so that you can have the same level training as the person at 911 you call shows up at your house. Intermediate use of force. Austin, I don't know why you carry pepper spray. You carry a gun. The reason I carry pepper spray is because I carry a gun. If all you have is a hammer, all your problems look like a nail. And in my world, in my best guess, about 80% of all situations, criminal situations, interpersonal conflict, are going to be what's called a simple assault. Someone comes up and slaps you or just pushes you. Is that a situation where you want to be able to pull your gun out? Is that the right tool? You may be able to use force, but is that a lethal force? Is that threat imminent? Do you have innocence? Is your response reasonable? Are you avoidance in this thing? And is your response proportional? So these are things you have to think about. And so many people go to the gun because that's all they've got. They've got freeze and gun. And between profanity and a pistol, we need some options. Now, my favorite option, without a doubt, is pepper spray. I've been a certified police pepper spray instructor since 1992. Made a lot of grown men cry in my life. And I'm a firm believer in pepper spray. I'm also a firm believer in a good, high-quality flashlight. And also, full disclosure, I like a nice tactical pen. I think that if you have a tactical pen, if you have a good flashlight, and you have a nice pepper spray, that trio will take you a long way. I think there'll be more situations that you could solve legally, ethically, morally, and within bounds of society with those three tools than you will a firearm. Now, there is a place where a firearm is absolutely needed and it's non-negotiable. But when you think of the whole spectrum, you need to have response. When you call 911, that first responder shows up, they have a whole tool belt of options. I want to make sure you have more than one option of either go to a firearm or not. So we need a binary decision. We also need to think about tactics and judgment training. Now, when I say tactics, it's not about growing a big bushy beard and getting a bunch of tattoos and talking about how you killed more men than unfiltered cigarettes. What I'm talking about with tactics are, anytime you're in a situation, you only get three choices: fight, flight, or freeze. And tactically, you only get to do three things: time, distance, and safer angles. Time, distance, safer angles. Well, think about this for a second. Time. Do you go right now or wait your turn? Distance. Do I get closer or do I get farther? And is there a safer angle? Can I put something between me and the thing that wants to hurt me that will absorb some sort of flying object? If so, I want to do that. And the problem is, if we don't train with teaching you how to factor in whether I need to do it right now, get closer, get farther, or put something between us. And I think this last one, the putting something between us and a safer angle, seeking cover, concealment, is so important. I invented in 2016 a thing called the CCAT, Cover Concealment Angle Trainer. You can see it in action in the low light, and you can also see it in action in the episode on cover, concealment, safer angles. But I really want to spend time with you in a virtual reality class after I give you the base knowledge to build that skill, to have the judgment, so it's integrated in your response. Because when you go, I need that thing to work unconsciously, and something we call your procedural memory. And we need to have 3 clear cans in a crisis. You know, whenever I've got someone in the simulator, been doing it for about 12 years now, we get to the shoot, no shoot part, I always get the same thing. Can I shoot him? I always go, you got the gun, you tell me. When they ask me, can I shoot him? They're actually asking 3 cans. 1, can I emotionally shoot him? What I found after doing thousands of people in a simulator, 1 out of 5 of my students, 20%, can't shoot an actor, realistic actor, on screen. And one day we're going to talk about that can in just a whole webinar. The second can is they wonder, can they physically shoot them because they've never shot under stress. They don't trust the physical capabilities they have with the gun. And the third thing is, can they legally? If you're asking, they'll give you a real quick tip. If you're asking, can I legally shoot them? That's the wrong question. The question shouldn't be, can I shoot them legally? It's, must I shoot them or I'm going to get hurt? And then finally, the last thing about being your own personal responder and being your own first responder is going to be preparing for the fight after the fight. You know, we always think about the bang, the incident. I'm focused on the left of bang and some of the right of the bang. But what I really need to understand is, when does a criminal assault happen? It's the minute you realize you're in an assault. When does that assault end? It ends when the last piece of paper from the last court gets signed off, whether it's criminal or civil. And for that fight, you're going to need help. Personally, straight up, I would not carry a firearm if I didn't have some sort of prepaid legal defense for self-defense. Personally, I trust FLP, Firearms Legal Protection, to trust me and to protect me and my family. If you look at their features, feature by feature by feature, they have everything you need, from the educational, the emotional, and even the psychological help to get you through an incident. Don't you hate it when the camera turns off? And I truly trust FLP. So if you think about it, after the incident, you're tossed in a world that you have no preparation for, and that is the criminal justice system. And it's not about truth, and it's not about justice. It's just puts you as a grind in a wheel. And what's good news is, if you have a legal representative you can trust, they're as good as you can get as long as you can afford them. That's why I have a prepaid legal plan that has no deductible, and it's not some sort of payback thing, that handles it from the start to the finish. So finally, there's never been much margin for error in self-defense. Outsourcing your safety may work in some communities, but for most of them it won't, because we don't have a stable enough situation to call. And if we call, they may not get there in time. Even if they want to get there in time, they may not have the officers, they may not have the dispatchers, may not have the equipment to get to you in time. And once they get there, we want them to be there in time to affect a positive outcome, not just fill out a report. So, as we always like to say on the closing of any event, be a guardian always and a warrior when needed. Real quick, I don't know what we're looking at for time. Are we okay on time? I've got some questions that y'all sent in advance, and I was shocked. These are excellent questions. They're well thought out. I was going to wonder if you were going to ask me, I didn't want to go where I thought. I was always need some weird questions, but I got some very good ones. The first one is, what advice would you give parents who are nervous about sending their kids off to school? Okay, a couple things about this. First off, I'm a parent of a grown child, so I don't have the school thing right now to deal with, but I want you to understand I feel your pain as a parent because we are giving the most valuable thing we have, our child, off to some sort of government or hopefully private entity that we can trust that will take care of them. When you think about what are the school issues, we have to think about what operational risk we're dealing with here. Are you worried about your child in school? Is this you worried about your child traveling to or from school? Or are you worried about your child as a latchkey situation? Or are you worried about your child with staff from the school? So we have to take more of a holistic view. If you haven't looked at our episode from Concealed Coalition University in family safety, I think that would be a really great place to start. You're going to break this down into people, place, and process. The people, the child that you're worried about going to school, is this a security dependent? Somebody who really cannot make competent decisions about their safety. Somebody we have to kind of bubble wrap their world. That is one thing. Are they a security dependent in training? Somebody who is at some point limited, but you're trying to get them at the point where they can have personal autonomy and protecting themselves. So we have limited access to bad guys, but they have to start making their own moves in their own world to protect themselves and be their own first responders. Or are they a sheepdog? You're putting them in there and they're a truly competent and rational child that can protect themselves. So I want you to go through that. And then I also want you to think about the read, recognize, and react. Read the risk that they face and where their vulnerabilities are. Recognize the fact that you're going to have to find a way to either provide security for them or make them self-sufficient on this in people, place, and process. And then make sure you react. And that means we have to train them and check in on them to make sure this process doesn't ever slip, that every day we have the same level of security, because after a while nothing happened, and we kind of get complacent. What brand of pepper spray do you recommend? I have two that I really like a lot. One is Palm pepper spray. I think it's a good chemical. I've been sprayed with it. It's not Saber, but it's not bad. But I think it has the absolute best form factor. I'm also a big fan of Saber. I'm not a big fan of Saber's hand unit, but I love their home unit. This is the Saber Red Crossfire technology. The problem is most has propellant and they have the pepper and you have to shake it. And if you get more than 45 degrees, you just get the hose is not able to pick it up and you get a hiss and a miss, not a spray and a hooray. And so I really like this unit a lot. This is the exact same one. If you ever see a picture of me on patrol, I carry right in the middle of my ballistic vest so I can get to it either hand. I like Fox for their 1 pound unit. This is You Kids Stop Playing on My Lawn size. 30 feet of rolling pane. Beautiful thing. This is the actual unit I carry on patrol when I have a large domestic and I've got something in the house and I need to get them out. This is what I use and highly recommend it. The thing about pepper spray is it's not which brand I recommend. It's to make sure you know. There is far more to it than spray and pray. And I hate to go back to this, but if you've not seen the episode from Concealed Coalition University, I highly recommend you do that because I think that pepper spray episode teaches you a lot. I'd love to see it a virtual tactical reality class where we can spray each other with eye goggles on and an inert unit. Just the light bulb comes on. It's like, wow, I need to hold it this way. I need to use my thumb, not my finger. And that's truly how I feel about pepper spray. Should I teach gunshot wound training to my kids? Don't think of it as gunshot wound training. Think of it as stop the bleed class. And if that's the answer, yes, I think you should. Because, you can be on a swing set and jump off and have a compound fracture and have a traumatic bleed situation right there, a car crash. So this to me is just one of those basic life skills that everyone should have. If you carry a firearm, you definitely need to make sure you know about gunshot wound training. You see, if I raise poisonous snakes, I'd want to know how to treat snake bite. Because if it's predictable, it's actually preventable. Same thing with guns. I could shoot myself. I could have we're in a gunfight, bullets going two ways. If I get shot and I bleed out, or someone I love and care about gets shot and bleed out, no matter what I did ballistically to the positive, we lost the gunfight. We're going to have scheduled a gunshot wound Concealed Coalition University class, and I think when you see what we do with gunshot wounds, you're going to like what we do. Because there's limited amount of tools, limited amount of options, and I think we might have a different take on it that I think you're going to like. What are some basic schemas I can use, remember, when it comes to firearms? Like stop, drop, or roll for a fire. This is a great question. Think of tactics. Time, distance, safer angles. Time. If a person's got a gun pointed right at your face, this is not the time to draw your gun. You can't outdraw a pointed gun at you. So you may want to wait until they're distracted and take your turn. Distance. If you're in a non-permissive environment and you're in a nightclub and some idiot comes in Florida and starts shooting the place up, when that gun jams, you may need to close the distance to solve that problem. Some situations, the best thing you can do is to remove yourself from that situation and gain more distance. More distance gives you more time, gives you more options. But most importantly, when you think about tactics with a firearm, it's learn to use cover, concealment, and safer angles to get out of visual range, get out of ballistic range, and get something between you and the flying things that want to hurt you. I'm an elderly woman who lives alone. What tools, firearms, and protection devices do you recommend for someone in my situation? You live alone. You can't do better than a dog. That's not true. That's not true. I'm going to take it back. That's not fair. You can do better than a dog. 2 dogs. How do you do better than 2 dogs? 2 great big dogs. The thing I like about a dog for a personal protection item is alarm system on your house, electronic alarm system, works when somebody breaches your home. That means they've already looked at you and thought you're quick, easy, low risk, low possibility of resistance. Juice is worth the squeeze on the attack. The dog will know when they walk down the sidewalk, he's looking at my house. You need a big dog. You just need one that really loves you. So I go for big dogs. Second thing is, I love pepper spray. You can carry it in your hand. It's socially invisible when you're out and about. You make a mistake, no one dies. And the third thing, if you live alone, Concealed Coalition University. Really and truly, it's the one-stop shop to get you the training you need to make a complete decision. And if you like what you see on there now, wait till you see what we have with season 2. I think you're going to just be blown away by next year, what we offer. And I think you're going to go, this is like my own personal police academy training to be my own first responder. And then finally, what happens if I shoot someone in self-defense? Will I go to jail? Okay, let me explain something to you. Jail and prison are different. If you shoot someone, you probably will go to jail. That's a given. The reason is if you think about it, when we shoot somebody in self-defense, it's actually a homicide. And our self-defense claim is, yes, I killed another human being. That's a bad thing, but there was a justification for that. And what do? They put you in jail so they can sort that out if they're going to charge you and what's going to happen. Prison is a very different thing. Now, how do you deal with that? You do what I do. You have to make a decision about your legal defense for self-defense, the fight after the fight. Now, some of you go, look, it'll never happen to me. I don't need to worry about it. And if it does, I'll get a public defender. Well, first off, to get a public defender, you're going to have to prove you're indigent, you can't pay. Second off, you're going to get what you pay for, which is low quality. And that public defender needs to go ahead and plea bargain that case out. And if they plea bargain any kind of high charge on you, you may not ever have another firearm again in your life. Second thing you can say is, wow, I got a really great lawyer. Well, that great lawyer will help you as long as you can pay. And the minute you can stop paying and you can't afford to fund that lawyer, your access to the justice system are gone. Me, one more time, I'm a big fan of a prepaid legal plan. There's many of them out there. Do your own diligence, do your own research. I'm telling you straight up, the one that protects me and the one that protects my family when I'm on patrol protecting your family is FLP. And if you look at all the features, all the benefits, plus the total commitment they have to just complete customer care, you can trust them. It's a couple of dollars a month and the problems are handled. You call 24/7, 365. You get a lawyer on the other end of the line. And you don't need some sort of crisis response team. I need a lawyer at the other end of that phone to tell me to shut up and everything's going to be okay. And then to get there as soon as they can to help me out of that situation. So I really want to thank you for coming out to our first Facebook Live presentation. I really want to do this topic whether you are a member of Concealed Coalition University or not, because I think this concept of not outsourcing your safety is really important. And I think it's really one that most people don't spend enough time thinking about just how valuable the ability to self-rescue is. And how rare it is to be able to find the training in a systematic way, not just a bunch of tips that put you in a place to where you have the knowledge, the skills, and the judgment to affect self-rescue. So again, thank you for showing on up. If you have any questions for our next Facebook Live, please send them to me. Also, I hope that this coming week keeps you safe and keeps you happy. And until then, be a guardian always and a warrior when needed.